Revenge with Karen.
I was rewriting a 48-page contract from scratch at 1:17 a.m. when Camille texted, "Need this finalized before 8. Client breakfast. No please, no context. Just her usual brand of last-minute arrogance. I'd spent the last 3 weekends massaging that deal into something airtight, NDA, risk allocation, post-transition obligations, all of it. Camille was too busy rehearsing which hand gesture made her look more visionary on Zoom. She hadn't read a single clause. But guess who'd be center stage at the pitch? I closed my laptop and stared at the stain ring from my mug. Legal caffeine. That's what they should have put on my nameplate. Except no one had ever bothered ordering me one. 10 years in the company. No nameplate, no promotion, no photos on the website. Just the steady hum of Judith, compliance ninja, contractual gravedigger, last to leave, first to get blamed. I wasn't always this jaded. There was a time I thought hard work would earn respect. But then I met Camille, the human equivalent of a scented candle, flashy, superficial, and headache-inducing. She showed up 5 years ago with a portfolio of buzzwords and a knack for erasing women like me with a smile and a "let's circle back." Now, don't get me wrong, some people might say I'm bitter. I'm not. I'm just very well informed. You do enough risk audits and you start recognizing the warning signs of rot long before anyone else smells the decay. Camille was mold and heels, and yet every quarterly town hall she got the applause. She saved the Boston deal? No, I did. She streamlined contract ops. No, I built that tool during a hurricane while she was wine tasting in Sonoma. But it didn't matter. Camille sparkled. I typed. She schmoozed. Debugged workflows. To most of the exec team, I was a ghost with a corporate laptop. It's funny, isn't it? How we worship noise and punish silence. I never chased the spotlight. I just made sure the power stayed on backstage. Speaking of power, look, I know 95% of you are eavesdropping on these stories without subscribing. And hey, I get it. But if you have ever stayed late fixing someone else's mess, if you've ever smiled through someone else taking credit for your blood and sanity, hit that like button and toss us a sub. It really helps the crew keep telling these stories. And I promise, it gets worse before it gets better. Anyway, back to my office hellscape. The big contract, $200 million with a fintech unicorn Camille had never even heard of before I flagged them during quarterly risk analysis, was nearing close. I'd nurtured that deal for 11 months. 11 months, but I wasn't invited to the prep meetings. Camille told the assistant I was too operational for client-facing work, which was rich, considering she once asked if an indemnity clause was that thing about not stealing lunch. The team parroted her energy. To them, I was wallpaper. The back office glue that kept the place from splintering, sure, but glue doesn't get bonuses. Glue doesn't get raises. Glue just holds. Got a calendar invite the night before the pitch. Camille's assistant had forgotten to loop me in. When I asked Camille if there were any materials I should bring, she responded with, "Just be on time. Try not to overthink it. You tend to make things more complicated than they need to be." That little dig wasn't even creative. She always said I complicated things, translation. I asked questions. Hard ones. Ones that would have prevented the Toronto mess. Audit failure, and the GDPR fine she tried to pin on a junior associate. But I swallowed it, like always. I pressed my skirt, packed 2 pens, 2 backups, and left my apartment early to beat traffic. I even prepped her notes, the ones she'd skim during the elevator ride up and pretend were hers. Still, I was 20 minutes early, standing in the underground garage like some underpaid James Bond, rehearsing my lines next to the hiss of leaky steam pipes. That's when the wheel popped off a janitor's cleaning cart. The garage badge reader blinked red, then red again, like a passive-aggressive robot judging my worth. I tapped it twice more, harder, like that ever worked, and finally gave up. The elevator to the C-suite was locked behind that smug little LED. So I sighed, took the stairs, clomped up 6 flights in heels that sounded like war drums echoing off concrete. That pitch meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. sharp, and Camille had made it very clear, this is a FaceTime client, not a Slack one. Translation, show up, shut up, and smile while she fakes knowing what a cap table is. By the time I got to P1, I was already sweating. That's when I heard the crash. It echoed hard, metal against concrete, followed by the unmistakable sound of liquid splattering and someone cursing under their breath. I turned the corner and saw him, a janitor, maybe mid-60s, kneeling on one knee next to an overturned cart. Disinfectant had poured out across the floor. Mop heads, paper towels, industrial-size Windex, everything was scattered like confetti after a parade no one wanted to march in. He looked up, startled to see someone in heels and a blazer walking toward him, and immediately dropped his gaze like he expected me to say, "That's not my problem." Maybe that's what everyone else did. I didn't even think about it. I dropped to one knee, popped open my bag, and pulled out the bottle of water I usually saved for the end-of-meeting migraine. "Here," I said, handing it to him. "Looks like you could use a minute." He blinked at me for a second before taking it, nodded silently, and tried to stand. The busted cart wheel caught on the lip of a parking divider and nearly tipped over again. "Hold up," I said, crouching to assess the wheel. It was bent like someone had backed into it, probably a distracted executive in a Tesla. I grabbed one of the mop handles and jammed it under the axle to pry it free, then reset the wheel as best I could. It wasn't perfect, but it would roll. "Let me help reload this," I offered, ready scooping up the bleach and the cracked container of powder cleaner. He didn't say much, just worked quietly with me. But when we were almost done, he looked at me and said, in a voice that didn't quite match his coveralls, "You always show up for people like this." I blinked. "Only when they're about to drown in Clorox and bad luck." He smiled. It was strange, warm, but searching. Then he nodded once, as if that answer mattered more than I knew. I didn't catch his name. Didn't think twice about the moment, really. Just patted down my hair, wiped a bleach smudge off my blazer sleeve, and booked it toward the service stairwell like a bat out of HR. By the time I reached the top floor, I had a stitch in my side, and my heels felt like medieval torture devices. I rushed down the glass hallway, past a dozen sleek conference rooms where no one ever invited me, reached the main boardroom with seconds to spare. Camille was already seated, flanked by 3 other VPs like a smug blonde hydra. Her designer pen was poised dramatically over her notebook, ready to pretend she was about to change the face of enterprise contracting. A tray of croissants, untouched. Crystal water bottles lined up like soldiers. And at the head of the table, a man I didn't recognize. Bald, tan, tailored suit that probably cost more than my Honda. Didn't look up when I walked in. Camille did. "Glad you could join us," she said, voice syrupy and sharp. "We were just about to start without you." Scattered chuckles from the peanut gallery. I nodded silent and took the seat farthest from her throne, not even bothering to explain. What was the point? Being 5 minutes late in Camille's world was worse than fraud. The stranger at the head of the table finally glanced up and locked eyes with me. His stare wasn't irritated. It was direct, evaluative. I offered the kind of tight-lipped smile you give someone right before they tell you your parking meter's expired. He didn't smile back, just slowly closed the leather folder in front of him. Camille was still talking, something about synergistic integration timelines, but the room suddenly felt colder. The stranger's hand rested on the folder like it was a grenade, and he was deciding whether to pull the pin. That was the first time it occurred to me that maybe I hadn't helped a janitor that morning. Maybe I'd passed a test, one nobody else in that building even knew they were taking. I'd barely settled into my chair, far corner, no window view, no microphone, because of course Camille didn't request one for me, when the temperature of the room dropped like someone had opened a server room door. The man at the head of the table, the one in the charcoal suit, Olex like a shark fin under his cuff, slowly turned his head and locked eyes with me again. Same stare as before, no blink, no shift, just a steady, unblinking scan like he was downloading every detail. Camille droned on, blithely unaware. "We've prepared a robust implementation plan with strategic mile markers across 3 quarters. The transition team will include," the man lifted one hand. Not high. Just a simple, controlled gesture. He was swatting a fly in 0 gravity. Camille's sentence died in her throat. "I'm only talking to her," he said. Silence. At first, I wasn't even sure I heard him right. The words took a second to land, then my stomach fell through the floor. Camille blinked, then gave the tight little laugh she saves for awkward client banter. "Oh, you mean, for the technical pieces Judith supports." He didn't look at her. Didn't move. Just repeated, quietly this time, "Her, or the deal's off." He reached for the leather folder in front of him, closed it with surgical precision, and slid it into his briefcase with the finality of a guillotine blade. Then he stood. That's when the chaos began, silent at first, then blooming like a backdraft. The VP of Revenue turned to Camille, blinking like someone had slapped him with a spreadsheet. "What is this?" Camille's face drained of color. He must be confused. "Judith doesn't," she's not client-facing. This is a misunderstanding. HR, Rebecca, who never looks up from her iPad, was suddenly writing in longhand. I stayed still. I felt like an animal in a trap. If I moved, the whole room might snap shut. The man adjusted his cufflinks, snapped his briefcase shut, and said, "I don't reward cultures that fail their own people." She passed. "You didn't." And then he walked. Straight out the boardroom, past the stunned assistants, past the two directors who tried to intercept him like malfunctioning Roombas, and disappeared into the hallway. The glass doors hissed shut behind him. No one moved. The VP stood. "Camille, what the hell just happened?" She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out but a weird wheezing half-laugh like her Wi-Fi was buffering mid-lie. He must have had a different agenda. Maybe he wanted to surprise us. "I'll call him, I'll fix this. Did you know him?" COO asked, arms crossed. Camille shook her head too fast. "He's a new contact." "Judith, did you?" All eyes snapped to me. I felt my throat tighten like someone had hit mute on my soul. I shook my head once, calm. "I've never spoken to him, not officially." "Not officially?" Camille parroted, voice rising. I repeated, slower, "I've never spoken to him at all." Technically true. The man I'd spoken to had bleach stains on his gloves and a bent cartwheel, not a six-figure watch, and a briefcase full of our Q3 revenue. The VP rubbed his face. "Did we just lose the Anderson deal because you sidelined the wrong person?" Camille looked like she might throw up her kale smoothie. "That's absurd. Judith is support staff. She files things. She doesn't manage relationships." Rebecca from HR glanced up finally. "Is that in her job description?" Camille froze. Because if she's responsible for client documentation, legal alignment, and vendor transition planning, that would qualify as relationship management under the current DOL benchmarks. Camille blinked. I mean, she handles backend, $200 million, the VP said flatly. Walked out the door because we ignored the one person who actually worked on the deal. I sat there, back pressed against the chair like it might absorb me. I didn't say a word. Not because I didn't want to, because I knew saying anything now would just inflame Camille's death spiral. She was unraveling, and everyone saw it. The more she spoke, the deeper the trench. "Get him back in the room," the COO snapped. Camille turned to me. "Judith, can you speak to him?" "Just explain that you're not. I don't have his number," I said. I didn't even know his name until 10 minutes ago. And that was the truth. A perfectly shaped, cutting, final truth. She couldn't respin or soften. Because for the first time in her career, Camille was facing a scenario she hadn't rehearsed, a room she couldn't control, and a man who looked like a janitor who had just reduced her entire charade to dust with one sentence. "I'm only talking to her." The first grenade came an hour later. I was back at my desk, heart still jackhammering behind my ribs when my screen flickered and booted me to the login screen. I tried again. Nothing. Reauthentication failed. I reached for my phone just as Camille's assistant messaged. "Hi, Judith. IT is reviewing folder access as part of a standard realignment. Please work from home today." Standard realignment. That was Camille code for toss her in a digital broom closet and pretend she never existed. I stared at the message like it was written in Klingon. My access to the Anderson deal, every doc, timeline, client memo, even the internal tracker I'd built, was gone. Not read-only, gone. The folder had vanished from my drive like it never existed, along with 3 years of email chains that traced every inch of the deal's evolution. Then came the call. "Judith," it was Rebecca from HR, sounding like someone trying to whisper across a minefield. "We've received a request to conduct a review of account involvement logs. No cause for alarm, it's just due diligence. In the meantime, please operate remotely. We'll update your access as soon as IT completes their sweep. No cause for alarm. That's what people say before a tornado, a layoff, or a colonoscopy." "I wasn't made aware of an audit," I said calmly. Rebecca hesitated. "It's internal." Camille raised concerns about unauthorized communication with the client. Ah, there it was. I let the silence hang. "She mentioned that you may have met with him off-record," Rebecca added, softer this time, "or provided materials without proper approval." "She's lying," I said, not loudly, not emotionally, just fact. Another pause, I understand. "If you have documentation of your interactions with the client, please send them to me directly." That's when it clicked. This wasn't just office politics anymore. Camille wasn't just scrambling, she was erasing me. And I knew the pattern because I'd cleaned up these patterns. Dozens of times for other departments. Sudden removal of access. The realignment talk. The narrative reshuffling while legal and HR played hot potato with the facts. I'd spent years documenting corporate cover-ups for other people. I never thought I'd need to do it for myself, but I knew what came next. The concerns about stability, the insinuations of burnout, the friendly offers to take a few weeks off to recalibrate, all of it aimed at breaking you down until you signed an exit package just to make the noise stop. I wasn't going to flinch. I opened a clean Word doc and titled it, Camille Timeline, Retaliatory Action Log. Then I pulled up every badge swipe from that morning, every meeting timestamp, every Slack message, every email where I requested clarification or was left off a thread. I screenshotted her 1:17 a.m. client breakfast text. I listed out the last 12 red lines I did on the contract and their submission times. I even pulled the metadata from the project tracker file, the one she'd exported and claimed as her own last week. If Camille wanted war, I was prepared to file it in triplicate. Then, something I didn't expect. Legal pinged me directly. It was Joel from compliance. Very dry, very procedural, usually buried under merger language. He messaged, Hi Judith, client request, we'll need your direct involvement on the Anderson transition. He's made his position clear, deal is contingent on your participation. That sentence hit like ice water. He'd reached out directly to legal, not Camille, not the VPs. Legal, I typed back, I no longer have access to the project files. My account has been flagged. Joel responded in under 30 seconds. That's being resolved. Effective immediately. Been re-added to the deal room with elevated permissions. Let us know if you need anything further. Elevated permissions. That wasn't just a fix, that was a signal. Camille's house of cards had caught wind. Within the hour, I was back in. But the files looked different now, like evidence. Every edit she made that contradicted my work. Every client-facing summary where she'd watered down risk to make her pitch look shinier. Every comment thread she resolved without actually addressing the flagged issues. She'd been dancing on the edge of malpractice for months, and I had the receipts. Still, I said nothing. I kept my camera off. I let Camille think her lies were landing. Let her spin her little tornado of plausible deniability. Because the thing about storms is, they always circle back. And this one was headed straight for her corner office. Next day started with rumors slithering through the company Slack like rats in the ceiling. Did you hear? Someone said she's having a breakdown. They're saying she got weird with the client, like fixated, like stalker level, cute, real cute. Camille's strategy had officially shifted from erasure to character assassination. I expected it, honestly. When the facts weren't bending her way, Camille always reached for gossip, weaponized whispers, delivered via manicured fingers on a touchscreen over lunch. She once got a senior analyst blackballed from promotion because he wore too many graphic tees. Lacks leadership polish, she said. The man had saved the company 6 figures in licensing errors, but his shirt had Pikachu on it, so obviously unstable. Now it was my turn. Obsessed with the client, one message said, he's older, rich, probably said something nice to her once, and now she thinks they're soulmates. Camille says she's been trying to insert herself into deals for months, said another. Like pushing boundaries. I read them without flinching. I didn't need to reply. I didn't need to defend, because I knew Camille was panicking. The more ridiculous the smear, the closer she was to the cliff. Still, it stung, not because it surprised me, but because I'd seen this exact maneuver used on other women. Women who asked questions, who didn't smile enough, who turned down drinks. Stable, hard to work with, too intense. Camille hadn't invented the playbook, but she damn sure laminated it. Midday, I got a calendar invite from legal. Subject line, statement review internal timeline. That's when I knew the tide was turning. I logged into the call, expecting a firing squad. Instead, it was Joel from compliance and Maya from general counsel. No Camille, no HR, just the two of them. A quiet stillness that told me they already knew something was off. Judith, Maya said gently, we're conducting a review of conflicting narratives around the Anderson pitch. We'd like to hear your side. I didn't offer theories. I didn't speculate. I didn't mention the rumors. I just uploaded the file I'd been building all week. Timeline, Slack messages, badge logs, time-stamped file edits, cross-referenced calendar invites. No adjectives, no opinions, just receipts. Facts. Joel skimmed a few pages, then said, you logged 300 hours on the Anderson deal. Camille logged 14. I didn't say anything. Maya flipped to another page. She redlined this clause after your edits, then reversed it an hour later without legal review. That violates policy. Still, I stayed quiet. This is thorough, Maya said, almost with something like respect. Is this how you always document your work? I nodded. It's how I protect the company. Exchanged a look, and for the first time in days I saw doubt in Camille's narrative. A hairline crack in her lacquered story. And then came the flowers. I returned from the kitchen to find a courier envelope on my porch. No return address, just my name in block letters. Inside, a small bouquet of irises and white lilies, understated but elegant, and a note typed, not handwritten. Cream cardstock, embossed, for treating people like people. No signature. I didn't need one. I knew exactly where it came from, because the same serif font had been used in the NDA our janitor had reviewed in the due diligence packet 2 months ago. He wasn't just rich. He was precise, and he'd just taken a side. I placed the note on my desk next to my laminated receipts, not out of sentiment, out of strategy, because sometimes the quietest gestures carry the sharpest edges. I wasn't unstable. I wasn't obsessed. It was documented, and Camille had just bet her career on the assumption that I wasn't. The invite came through at 6:42 a.m. Subject line in all caps. Emergency strategic alignment, mandatory. No agenda, no attachments. Just a meeting link, a 9 a.m. start time, and the signature Camille always used when she was trying to look official. Camille D. Harrington, VP Global Accounts Vision. Strategy. Execution. Knew that combo well. Vision, her ego. Strategy, someone else's work. Execution, her favorite thing to take credit for. I didn't respond. I didn't forward the invite. I didn't text Maya from legal or Joel from compliance. I just brewed coffee, opened my laptop, and waited. 9 sharp, the meeting filled up fast. Half the board, 3 VPs, legal counsel, and Camille, center square in her favorite red blazer, hair shellacked into crisis chic waves. She looked calm, performed calm, but her eyes flicked too fast between windows. Her voice, when she started, was an octave higher than usual. Thanks, everyone, for making time, she began, like she hadn't hijacked everyone's calendar. I wanted to clarify some recent miscommunications surrounding the Anderson engagement. There's been confusion regarding roles, deliverables, and internal alignment. I take full ownership for any ambiguities, said ambiguities like someone else had created them. A masterclass in passive accountability. I've spoken with client-side stakeholders, Camille continued, and I believe we're on track to salvage the relationship if we act quickly to realign roles and streamline point-of-contact visibility. Translation. Remove Judith before the client formally picks her. Someone on the board unmuted. Camille, are you suggesting we remove Judith from the transition team? Camille hesitated. I'm suggesting that we clarify channels. She's been, how do I say this, over-involved in ways that confuse ownership. The client may have misunderstood her role. Then came the voice. I don't misunderstand anything. The meeting stopped breathing. His tile had appeared silently, like a ghost entering mid-seance. No chime, no joining now. Just the man, our janitor turned billionaire, seated calmly in a leather chair, in front of a wall of bookshelves that screamed old money and international influence. Camille's smile collapsed. Good morning, he said, with the smooth cadence of someone who buys and sells companies before breakfast. Apologies for the drop-in. I was forwarded this link by someone on your legal team. I assume that's all right. No one dared say no. He folded his hands. There seems to be some confusion around who's leading my account. Camille tried. Realigning responsibilities too, he raised one hand. Let me be perfectly clear. If you remove Judith from this deal, the deal dissolves. Immediately, no renegotiation, no escalation, we walk. The line went dead silent. Camille opened her mouth, closed it, swallowed. I think there's been some miscommunication. There hasn't, he said, voice flat. We ran our final diligence weeks ago, including a soft audit of your leadership team. Some passed. Some. He didn't need to say names. The CFO leaned forward. Sir, may I ask how Judith came to your attention? The client nodded. She stopped to help a man in a parking garage. Broken cart, leaking bleach. She didn't know who I was, didn't ask, just helped, and offered me water. He looked directly into the camera. She's the kind of person I build with. The rest of you tried to build around her. I stayed quiet, didn't speak, didn't flinch, just stared at the flickering green light on my webcam, like it could absorb all the heat boiling under my collar. Another board member cleared their throat. Camille, can you clarify your earlier statement about Judith's role being ambiguous? Camille blinked. She wasn't authorized to lead transition comms. Joel from legal unmuted. Per our records, Judith authored 86% of the client-facing material, including the risk annex Camille submitted under her own name. The temperature shifted again. Camille flushed. That's not accurate. She was just providing. The CFO raised a hand. We'll be pausing this meeting to conduct a full review. The CEO, who hadn't spoken yet, leaned in at last. Camille, I want a one-page explanation of your decisions regarding Judith's access revocation, submitted by noon. This meeting is over. Click, click. One by one. Dropped off the call. Camille was the last one left besides me. She didn't say a word, just stared at her screen like it might suddenly offer her a rewind button. I didn't offer comfort. I didn't offer a smirk. I simply logged off, quietly. Because the moment Camille tried to erase me from the room, she also erased her last chance at control. And someone far more powerful had just made it clear. I wasn't going anywhere. The email hit at 3:14 p.m., right after the last meeting ended, and just before the office usually starts gossiping over Slack. No subject line, no sender name, just a plain text message blasted to the entire upper leadership distro list, and conveniently CCing half of legal, 2 senior HR reps, and 1 very curious intern who'd been BCC'd for God knows what reason. The message started with a single sentence. You can lie to the client. You can lie to the board. Your Outlook permissions can't lie to metadata. Then came the attachments. 4 PDFs, each one labeled in bloodless precision. Complaint template Judith draft docx, restructure proposal July final V3 CDHBPTX, private notes HR 1-on-1, PDF, screenshots account transfer Slack zip. I opened the first file slowly, like it might detonate. Inside, a draft HR complaint Camille had written before the Anderson meeting, before the alleged obsession, before the narrative that I was mentally unwell had even happened. She'd saved it in her personal OneDrive, and someone, probably someone very tired of her, had yanked the receipts straight out of the ether. The second file showed a draft org chart she'd been manipulating behind the scenes, relabeled my position as contract support TBC, and written a note in the corner. Explore options to sunset role post-close, quietly. Sunset, like I was a failed app feature. The third file, notes from a confidential meeting with a junior HR rep. Camille had referred to me as socially disconnected, likely neurodivergent, and a risk to client stability. She also said I was too quiet to be trusted in a leadership position. And the fourth file, screenshots from Slack channels she'd created, private ones, where she and 2 other VPs had referred to me as the librarian and our little compliance gnome. It wasn't just an attack, it was a campaign. Coordinated, premeditated, and cloaked in the polished language of performance realignment. But the mask was off now. Within 20 minutes, the company intranet lit up like a Vegas Strip fire. People stopped pretending they weren't reading it. In Slack, the actions pinged every second. The legal team posted a memo by 4:05. We are conducting a formal investigation into the unauthorized access and dissemination of confidential documents. Please do not forward the materials further. But it was too late. Pandora's inbox was open. And then came the last leak, the one no one expected. A forwarded internal memo from the client's private equity firm, timestamped 3 weeks prior to the pitch meeting, laid out their due diligence plan in bullet points. Standard stuff. Site visit, fiscal review, leadership evaluations. And then this, final test, executive humility and cultural integrity stressor. Lead partner will engage in incognito observation, janitorial disguise. Evaluate team's treatment of non-strategic personnel. I read it twice. He hadn't just shown up dressed like a janitor for kicks. It was part of a premeditated stress test, quiet crucible to see who held actual value and who just played visionary on PowerPoint. Camille failed, spectacularly. She didn't just ignore him. She literally stepped over a broken cart and kept walking while barking into her AirPods about value alignment. I passed without knowing I was being graded. No script, no prep, no strategy. Just a bottle of water, a bent mop wheel, a moment where I acted like a human being instead of a performer. And that, apparently, was the whole test. The fallout came quickly. By 5:30 p.m., Camille's calendar was locked from the outside. An emergency board memo went out requesting a full HR and departmental audit of all personnel actions overseen by Camille D. Harrington over the past 24 months. Assistant posted OOO for the remainder of the week with the kind of punctuation that screamed lawyer-approved exile. No one said her name out loud. Not yet. But the absence of her name was louder than any firing announcement could have been. I didn't gloat. I didn't post a Slack emoji. I just sat at my kitchen table, still in my blazer, and read the client memo one more time. Not the public version, the private one. There, a tiny postscript at the bottom, it said, Judith redacted, strong moral filter, high integrity under pressure. Recommend as primary point of continuity. Not hard worker, not quietly efficient, not supporting role, primary point of continuity. It took 10 years, a staged humiliation, and a billionaire in janitor's clothing, but the truth had finally surfaced. And this time, I didn't have to say a word. Emergency meeting was called at 7 o'clock a.m. sharp. No soft invites, no optional attendance, just red font subject lines and silence thick enough to choke on. A senior partner from the parent company joined in person, which hadn't happened since the acquisition 3 years ago. The kind of presence that meant one thing: heads were about to roll, and they'd be rolled in full view of the board. Camille entered the room late. Not late by minutes, late like she didn't know where to sit anymore. She hovered near her usual seat at the head of the operations table, then hesitated when she saw it already occupied by the general counsel. A chair had been pulled up in the corner with a legal pad and an envelope on it. The message was clear: you are not running this room. Everyone watched her pretend not to notice. I wasn't there in person. I was patched in via secure line from legal's office, where I'd been quietly sitting with Joel and Maya. They kept their expressions blank, but the energy in the room had shifted. Not tense, not hostile, expectant. Camille was asked, politely but firmly, to recuse herself while preliminary findings were reviewed. She resisted at first, played shocked, claimed confusion. Her voice pitched itself into that trembling octave she usually reserved for high-end donors and red wine spills at fundraisers. This is a misunderstanding, she said. The senior partner looked her dead in the eye and said, you're suspended pending outcome. Take the envelope. She did. Her hands were shaking. She didn't look back as she left the room. The door closed with a sound like final punctuation. Then, silence. The kind of silence that doesn't ask permission to hang in the air. The CEO leaned forward. We need someone to take point immediately. The clients made it clear they'll walk if we fumble again. All eyes drifted toward the screen. I didn't flinch, didn't blink. I'll do it, I said, with one condition. The room waited. No titles, I continued. No interim, no acting head of whatever. I don't need that. Let my work speak first. The CEO nodded once. Fair. The senior partner tilted his head. You good with pressure, Judith? I looked him square in the eyes. I've been carrying this company's revenue pipeline for 2 years. You just didn't know it, he smirked. Now we do. They moved fast after that. Legal updated my clearance. Finance looped me in on transition logistics. Comms was told to reroute all client-facing messaging through me, but to keep my name internal for now. Quiet power. No announcements, no fanfare, just function. And then, around 2 o'clock p.m., came the call. The client was ready to sign. We used DocuSign, but he insisted on a twist. He wanted my initials on every page, not just the signature block, every page. To mark the integrity of the document, he said, your fingerprints built this. It's only right. So I sat in my apartment, slippers on, blouse wrinkled, coffee cold, and tapped through a $200 million contract like it was a grocery list. JD, 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 over and over, page after page. When I hit the final screen, my hand trembled, not from nerves, from relief. It was done. Not done like the end of a task. Done like the end of a fight I didn't even know I'd been in until the bruises showed up. Camille, from what I heard, was in a conference room downstairs, still trying to find someone to explain how it had all fallen apart. No one answered her Slack messages. Her badge still worked for now, but her calendar had emptied itself like a vanishing act. She never reached out to me, not to apologize, not to explain. I think, deep down, she knew I wouldn't give her the dignity of a scene. I wasn't angry anymore. I didn't need revenge. I just wanted to exhale. And for the first time in months, I did. The all-hands was called for 4:30 p.m., late enough to guarantee full attendance, early enough to disrupt everyone's fake afternoon deep work blocks. The conference room was packed shoulder to shoulder. Phones muted. Laptops closed. People leaned against walls, perched on window sills, whispered theories behind coffee cups. Everyone knew something seismic had happened. They just didn't know where the fault line was, or whose career was about to be swallowed by it. Camille stood near the back wall, flanked by no one. Her badge still hung around her neck like a vestigial tail. No laptop, no notepad. Just crossed arms and a frozen expression that tried to project confidence, but cracked around the edges like sun-baked veneer. The CEO stepped up to the front, flanked by legal and finance, face unreadable. He didn't tap the mic, didn't ask for quiet, just started talking. "The Anderson deal has officially closed," he said, with record terms. The room sucked in air like it was one collective lung. He continued, "We've secured a multi-year engagement at a valuation that exceeds projections by 11%. Operational flexibility, evergreen clauses, and a customized compliance matrix built from the ground up." People clapped, cheered. A few even whistled until he held up a hand. "This isn't a celebration of numbers," he said. "It's a reckoning." Silence. This client saw something we all missed, something most of us have been trained not to see. He turned slowly, looked toward the side wall where I was standing near the emergency exit. I hadn't wanted a seat at the table. I just wanted a clear view of the room. He gestured toward me. "Judith didn't pitch this deal. She built it. Quietly, precisely, relentlessly. While the rest of us were looking in the wrong direction, she was laying the foundation that saved us." People turned. Not just turned, looked. Looked at me with the kind of sudden awareness that stings and soothes at the same time. Faces I'd passed in the hallway 100 times without a nod. Coworkers who hadn't bothered to learn my last name. A manager who once said I lacked client sparkle. All looked at me now like they were seeing a ghost step out of the walls. And there, standing behind them all, trying not to flinch, was Camille, boxed out. No badge access to the project. No invitation to the post-signature calls. No ability to spin this into a win. Just a smudged memory of power slipping between her fingers. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I didn't shift weight or wave. The billionaire client, and who'd once accepted a bottle of water with bleach on his gloves, was standing by the catering table, quietly sipping from a paper cup. He met my eyes, nodded once, and I nodded back. Not a bow, not a thank you. Just a shared understanding between two people who had both seen the inside of this company from the lowest angle. A woman with no title, and a man who chose to wear a janitor's uniform to test who still treated people like people. That was it. No applause, no speeches, no dramatic slow clap. Just the moment where every eye in the room shifted, subtly, permanently. Where silence stopped being mistaken for weakness. Where the invisible became undeniable. And that was enough. You're the real stars of the corporate jungle. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe, or I'll flick the switch on your old cubicle memories.